Hola, mi nombre es Mercedes Somosierra, soy educadora para la paz y en esta ocasión tengo el privilegio de contar con la presencia de 3 académicos ucranianos, el doctor Maksym Yakovlyev, Anna Osypchuk y Oleh Sabura, que vienen de Kyiv, Ucrania, a visitarnos y vamos a hacerles algunas preguntas. Tenemos muchas preguntas para hacerles y vamos obviamente a cambiar al idioma inglés porque es el idioma en el que nos podemos entender y lo van a ver en subtítulos luego en la edición final. First of all, welcome to Argentina, to you all. Thank you for being here. It is our pleasure and our honor to receive you here in Buenos Aires. I have like a million questions for you, especially for the Argentinian people who know little about Ukraine. Can you tell us about yourselves? Can you tell us what is Ukraine, especially on Vyshevanka Day? Today is Vyshevanka Day. We'll talk about more later, but what is Ukraine?
Ukraine, there will be an obvious answer, the country in the Europe, which if you judge by territory is the largest country. That has territory all in the Europe, but it's probably not saying much to you. And it's a country in the Eastern Europe with a very complicated history, and it's been for many years of our history. It's been divided between 2 empires, and it's been the battlefield between these empires for many years. So. There is a joke that Ukraine is very gifted with land, with resources, we are very good so we have very good soils for agriculture, we have nice climate overall, we have access to seas, there is a joke that goes that everyone is happy with that and is gifted by God, and with a teacher of geography said that's perfect, of some other sciences, and then the teacher of history said, well, okay, then now you hold my beer, because that is the bad thing for history to be situated as Ukraine is, because we are on a crossroad between East and West and North and South in Europe, and that's why we have very complicated history. On the other on the other side, we have a very passionate people who always fought against all of these empires. That's why we don't like authorities, because authorities often were foreign authorities which you oppose. That's why Ukrainians are very individualistic in the way that we hold our own, and you can actually live by your own household from your land. So that is a very individualistic mindset, and you defend this land. So we have this Cossack movements and very like nation of warriors on this side. On the other hand, we have this level of collectivity where you unite with your neighbors and you defend together, because to defend yourself, you actually can't do this alone. You have to have a strong community feeling. So you oppose authorities together. That's why we are very much into all of the protest and opposing. And you see this in all of our politics.
And you give me the perfect time to ask something that is, I have heard many times in Argentina, why don't they just leave? They are being bombed. Why do they keep on defending their land? Why don't they just run away? Why let the war drag on?
Yeah, because the land is our soul. I mean, we feel very connected to our land. I mean, the land is, it's yours, what you have, it's your country, your land, and you don't have any other. So for Ukrainians, this connection with the land is very important. And of course, there are diasporas of Ukrainians all over the world, but it's rather than exception comparing to the total number of Ukrainians. So we would stay and fight in many ways rather than leave. But I mean, our history shows that even if it's a very strong for and a very strong enemy that you're fighting. If you fight together, you have a chance to win even the most upscale or most I don't know, the biggest scale. I mean, the battle where your enemy is 10 times bigger, you still, if you fight, stay and fight, you can still win.
It's your home.
Well, it is. Yeah, it's.
You never leave your home, right? So, why are you here in South America?
You asked
yes.
about Vyshyvanka, and
Yes.
it was missed a little bit. So today is National Vyshyvanka Day. We wear it, and this is very important in this context today because the only thing the Russia wants from us just to vanish our culture, just to make us Russians or expel us from our territory and settle there. So they don't recognize our identity, language, history. They say part of our history is there. So for us, it's just very important. We just wear Vyshyvanka and we fight Russians. So. And I'm wondering, as Anna said, Ukraine was a battlefield between many empires, and Russia wanted to erase Ukrainian identity for centuries. So the easiest way now to fight Russians is just to be Ukrainian, to speak Ukrainian language, listen Ukrainian music, just do our do everything within our culture, like cooking borscht as we did in Brazil for 40 people like a few days ago, and which was recently recognized as UNESCO heritage as Ukrainian dish. Russians tried to steal it, and you just live in Ukraine and be Ukrainian, and it's just the least you can do. The main thing is fighting on the front line, and still Ukraine is not that dangerous. For example, as Brazil, we visited recently, so we felt, in Brazil, in Catholic University in Brasilia, one of the professors said that the level of violence in Brazil on the streets is comparable to the war zone. And in Ukraine, you can measure the risks. So thanks to our defenders, you feel like much more safer, even during the wartime. So it's very good for us that you just can live there. And again, so Ukraine is our home, as you asked. What is Ukraine? And about Vyshyvanka, it's just being Ukrainian, live in Ukraine, and you're already fighting.
Asserting your identity, right?
Yes.
Reaffirming your identity through a beautiful shirt that has many varieties, right? As
Of
we
course,
see in the
yes.
map.
Every region
has a variety to it. And
I would add that it is approximation, of course. I mean, if you go that historically, it doesn't necessarily reflect, but that's the modern narrative is like that. So.
And so what is it like to be Ukrainian on a daily basis? What is a regular day in Ukraine under a full-scale invasion that has been going on for more than 4 years now?
Thank you. Very interesting question. So we had a nice meeting with the students in one of the classes at the Pontifical Catholic University, and they also asked this question. So first, I always say that I would not wish for anyone to experience the same. So it's good that God saves Argentinians from this experience. So this. Secondly, first, of course, you get used to it because at some point it is like business as usual. If you survive the night attack, you go to work, you do your regular stuff. Secondly, if you survive, of course, there are risks always.
Because there's every night there's a risk you won't survive.
Because the biggest Russian lie, and Putin and all his war criminals in the Russian government, they continue telling that we are only aiming for military objects or some political objects, but they're really hitting residential buildings, and it's unimaginable if you sleep at home and a missile or drone hits your house. Or if they target, it happened 2 years ago, and it regularly happens not only in Kyiv, they target, for example, hospitals. 2 years ago it was hospital for children with cancer. It's horrible. It's really crimes against humanity. So, but the Ukrainians were very resilient because we have no other choice. If we do not fight back, there will be no Ukraine and no Ukrainians, because we know what is happening in the temporarily occupied areas of Ukraine. It is real pure colonialism, with settler colonialism, with Ukrainians taking away the identity. There is a total ban on Ukrainian language. If you just speak Ukrainian under occupation, you can end up in jail. They torture our prisoners of war. Every time you just need to go and look when the exchange of prisoners of war takes place, how our prisoners of war come back from Russia. They are very meager, thin. They are tortured, sexually abused. Some of them even castrated. It's horrible. And then you compare how we treat Russian prisoners of war. It's incomparable. So answer your question, it's resilience that we need to live, to fight back and to be resilient. And there are many things that help us. And one of the things that we find particularly important, we're now in Argentina, and we are very glad to be here. Because when you ask the first question, what is Ukraine? I think we share a lot of similarities with Argentina that we can see, because people are friendly, people are curious, everybody wants to live in peace, in just peace, of course. And as Anna said, and Oleh also mentioned this, this sense of security, we are here, and also the Ukrainian diaspora is also, we know that the many Ukrainians left for Argentina, and I know this from Brazil. We met also Ukrainian diaspora. We asked why people would go to South America, because you asked why are we in South America. Back then, our Ukrainians, fellow Ukrainians, wanted to go as far away from Europe as possible, from war, to other continent, to build the better lives. And I think what Ukrainians and Argentinians today share, we also want to live a better life.
And what have you discovered about Brazil and Argentina during this first trip to South America? What are the highlights? Good and bad. We can take criticisms. It's okay. We know we have things to fix here.
I will probably start and pass to my colleagues. One thing that we discovered is that there is totally different perspective to how you look at things, because we look from Ukrainian, and which is ultimately a European-centered perspective. And the world from these lenses looks very different from the world if you look from Brazilian or from Argentinian perspective. And it's not totally obvious at the moment of what is the difference, but it is there. And I believe that it probably is different in Brazil and in Argentina between themselves. So we come from the country which is the biggest in Europe, how I mentioned, but it's small compared both to Argentina and to Brasilia. Yeah, so the size of the country, and the difference in nature and everything is amazing. And the other thing is, of course, the feel of, I can't admit that Oleh somewhat mentioned, feeling of security. We come from the country at war, but it feels safe, totally safe to walk in Kyiv in the twilight or in the night. Well, currently the curfew, but if there was no curfew, you could walk any place in Kyiv with your phones, with everything, and not be afraid and feel totally safe. And to come to the country where it is different, and where you should be more aware, or even more aware, like in Brazil, where the level of street violence is much higher, is also very different. Then probably pass to my colleagues, so they will add their.
We are taught in schools that in the southern hemisphere, winter and summer are different to where we come from. But it's first here in Argentina that we can see yellow leaves. It's like autumn, but with palm trees. It's very exotic for us, but it looks nice. So, and the weather is like in real autumn in Ukraine, except for the palms, and you can hear some birds that we don't have flying around in Kyiv, which is very nice. So my first takeaway from Argentina is, of course, the steak. It is literally the best meat I have ever eaten so far, and Argentina is very famous for its meat production. It was very tasty, extremely tasty. Of course, I now have to bring a couple of bottles of wine, because in Ukraine you can buy Argentinian wines in supermarkets. It's, I would say, rather popular. You know that these wines are called the New World wines, but it's very nice. The second thing, maybe from this South America, I keep asking colleagues in Brazil and also here in Argentina, what do you think about the concept of the global South? Do you call yourself more Latin America or South America? It's interesting. Sockets, electricity. We're so surprised that Brazil and Argentina, if you want to charge your phone, you need the different appliances to stick in. This was a bit of surprise. Unfortunately, here our roaming and credit cards payment is a bit complicated compared to Brazil. We have to complain about that. But Uber functions well, so we can get around. It works fine. The passport control was very efficient and fast, so the airport arrival, we liked it. Because unlike many European capitals, you arrive, you spend a lot of time in queues. Here, everything was very efficient. So we really like chuk chuk chuk. Everything. We felt welcome. I mean, this was good. Maybe also how our diplomats work. They're very grateful both to embassy in Brasilia and also here in Buenos Aires that they help organize meetings for us. They're very active, so we are grateful to our diplomats because we see the work that they do, and it's nice. And of course, Ukrainian community. We met the Ukrainian Ukrainian diaspora man in Brazil, and we met a lady here from Ukrainian diaspora. It's always very nice, so it's also a good takeaway. Maybe one more thing from Brazil is I wanted to see capybara. Oh. And we saw 2 capybaras. It was very nice.
Yeah, they're super cute.
They're so cute.
So do you feel accompanied and supported from the peoples around the world?
Yeah. Oleh can answer that. Yeah.
Company?
Yeah, supported, accompanied
all
by
around?
The world. Yeah, do you feel support around the world towards Ukraine and Ukrainians?
In different countries, differently. So in Europe, it's almost everywhere. People like understand you, but also some countries are very different. For example, when we were in Kosovo, I was very surprised. Is it Ukraine doesn't recognize Kosovo as an independent country, but we were so welcome. And in Ukraine, people know little about Kosovo, but in Kosovo we had the free meals there. I had a discount in the shops because I'm from Ukraine. When we visited the church, the man said, "Oh, we were gathering fundraising money for drones for Ukraine in our church," and I was very surprised there. And in some countries in Europe, like, oh, it's okay, but here. I feel that people know little. I feel like majority of the people. If we go to the university, to our partners, students that come to our meetings, they are supportive, of course. But generally, I feel that people taxi driver said us "spasiba" in Russian, thinking that we are Russians, and often people asking like a waiter in Rio, "Are you from Russia?" Like he could just ask like, "Where are you from?" And when we checked in our apartment, Senora who met us asked, "Russia, Ukraine?" I said, "No, Russia." No. And she was laughing like, "Oh, you're so like offended by Russia. Like I don't care, Russia, Ukraine, like the same." It's like, so yeah, that is the feeling that people from academia, from think tank who are deeply in like international relations, so they support, but also we had meetings with different journalists, and we felt differently also in this regard.
If I may add, we do feel like that here the knowledge is less. There is less knowledge and less involvement because this is the war very far away from Argentina or Brazil. But on the other hand, there is a much more, I think, political divide influencing, or your ideology influencing your stance on the support for Ukraine, because in European Union countries it's only like the fringes, the totally not accepted like fridges, which, for example, very radical left or very radical right would be against supporting Ukraine, and and the overall majority of population would support, regardless of their political stance. But here we feel like it's more, there is much more political divide here in Brazil or in Argentina influence the position towards Ukraine without real knowledge about the situation in Ukraine.
And talking about support, what are the most pressing, urgent needs for Ukraine now? Some of them, at least, right?
Oh, there's always the fundraising, money for the Ukrainian military. There is always fundraising initiatives for the humanitarian aid, but Russia is constantly shelling and wants to advance in Ukraine. So I cannot tell if there is a particular now any pressing, but there are many reliable organizations that collect money of different forms of support.
And on the other level, there is a constant need for diplomatic support and for supporting worldwide organization. We need a constant pressure with sanctions. For example, we need help with bringing war criminals to justice and actually calling what Russia is doing in the occupied territories and been doing against children, for example, deporting children, taking them away, committing acts of genocide and calling it a genocide. This will need a support in international courts with international organizations, so it is very important.
I was going to ask you exactly about that. I was planning to delve into that issue, which is to me the most heinous crime that is being committed in Ukraine against children. At least that we know 20,000 children that have been stolen from Ukraine. Very few people in South America and I would say in the world know about this reality. Can you tell us more about this, please?
Before I move to children, I also wanted to ask for support from Argentina in different sports associations. Now it's a disgrace that, the full-scale invasion started. Russian athletes were not allowed to compete under Russian flag and also from Belarus. Now it's a disgrace that many professional sports associations now start allowing Russians to compete under Russian flag. And for many of these Russian athletes and sportsmen, sportswomen are actually those who support the war. They are connected to Russian military forces. They support Putin. So if Argentina is active in many different sports associations, I do hope that Argentina support that a country that is committing genocide, abducting children, cannot be competing under its flag with people who openly are connected to Russian military. It is a disgrace. So with the Russian abducted children, it's a hideous crime against humanity. You know that in Russia, it's almost, I don't know how to compare it, if not to use the word Nazi style, where they have re-education camp for abducted children, but also for children from the temporary occupied areas. It's horrible. This is a horrible crime. It's impossible to imagine that in the world people do things like that to our Ukrainian children.
In the 21st century.
In the 21st century.
And we do know for a fact that they changed their names, their birth certificates, etc. So it becomes almost impossible to track them down.
True. So any support there would be very great, especially in the international arena, and putting pressure on Russia, because imagine this, it is a psychological trauma for life, totally erasing and changing identity of a person, and it is a crime against I'm trembling when I'm telling this. It's impossible. Imagine your child being taken from you and telling that you are nobody. There is no such thing as Ukraine, giving total different name, as you said, and re-education camps that are at times violent. What we hear from reports, it's not only crazy. It's hideous crime. So on that, we need as much support in the international arena as possible.
What is your desired future for this new bond between South America or the Americas in general and Ukraine? What do you expect for the future for this new relationship between Ukraine and the Americas. What do you expect from us? What would you like us?
Sorry, I'm keeping too much, but my small dream would be, I would imagine a Ukrainian student or somebody like that coming on a scholarship or maybe studying here in Buenos Aires, maybe at Pontifical Catholic University somewhere else, then coming back to Ukraine and becoming an ambassador to a Latin American country or Minister of Foreign Affairs or something who will really understand, and vice versa. If Argentinian youth can come and study at our university, do the diploma, maybe do the PhD, and then become ambassadors to Europe, for example, or people here in Argentina working for the government or in private sector understanding, that would be a huge win, I mean, for all of us.
If I may add, I would very much like it to go beyond the current presidents or the next presidents, so it won't depend on a particular persons in the power,
Exactly, yeah.
but it will become more institutionalized and more permanent. So unfortunately, on a world trade level, in many things we are competing, like for selling grains, for example, or for some agriculture. But there are things where I think which could be explored in the trade between our countries, between Ukraine and Argentina, between Ukraine and Brazil, between Ukraine and Uruguay and other Latin or South American countries. So there are probably even potential for military cooperation, particularly taking into account Ukrainian experience in this and experience with new technology warfare. It might not be necessary for having a military action, but for example, the drone technologies could be used for guarding border control, especially in the areas which is not accessible easily. We do not have such areas in Ukraine, but I think there are a lot of such areas where borders between Latin America countries are. So there could be new venues to explore in relations between our countries, but what I really hope that it won't depend on personalities and won't depend on just people, but it would be a long-term initiatives that would continue and bring and be fruitful.
We have something in common, as you said. You are not only the biggest country in Europe, but you also feed parts of the world as we do with the grains, so we have that in common. We can cooperate in that sense. But is there anything that the world doesn't know about Ukraine or Ukrainians? Is there anything that you would say, hey, nobody knows this about us?
No, I mean, I see Oleg has his own version, but I would say before the full-scale invasion, I would say that there was a lot of things like that. But after, I think the world get to know a lot about Ukraine. And I think probably the thing that really should be highlighted is that we do value our freedoms, and we do value the pluralistic discourses in politics very much. And there's been old jokes about saying, where to Ukrainians you will always have 3 hetmans or 3 leaders. So I think that that really there is a lot to know about Ukraine, and unfortunately circumstances made us much more known to the world than before. But it just always nice, like, to go beyond the stereotypes. Before that, Ukraine was associated with Chernobyl in many cases. So I don't know. I mean, probably Oleg can add.
Yes, I would like to say that after the Russia started the aggression, Ukrainians started to rediscover themselves too. Not only the world doesn't know many things about Ukraine, but Ukrainians too. For example, now we have a renaissance of our culture. Now, like, our music in the top of the streamline platforms, chats, because it was flooded by Russian music, like in everywhere, like theater, movies, TV, and we are rediscovering our culture. We are rediscovering now our writers, especially from 30s, when all the writers and Ukrainian cultural elite was killed during the Stalin time, and we are now rediscovering like very high-end pieces of art, of literature again, and Ukrainians also like rediscovering, like realizing many things about their everyday life, especially those who go abroad. Ukrainian refugees, they come to European countries and notice that we always were looking like on these countries they are superior to us, like, but they see that we have so many things much way better, technologies, digital services, just services at all, restaurants, medicine, like everything, like
profusion of things, of goods.
Yes.
Variety. I've seen it myself, and I was absolutely surprised by it. Visiting a country under invasion and having that supply of everything that you would need and more surprised me a lot. I
never was a coffee lover, like big coffee lover, but when I travel, it's so difficult to find a good coffee. I didn't know it's so good in Ukraine. Like you travel and always is the problem, like everywhere.
I don't know if Maksym has a bit read, because I want to add another thing. In going beyond the stereotype, Russia kind of appropriated the whole of Soviet legacy, and it's not like we are fighting with her on that, but Soviet Union wasn't Russia, and in many ways, like for example, Ukrainians fought to the bigger proportion in the Second World War than Russians, and this heritage got totally appropriated by Russia. So in a ways, when Russia is using Soviet legacy to promote its agenda against Ukraine in a global south, it's actually eliminating the whole part of Ukraine being the most technologically advanced part of Soviet Union this year, the part with most workers, the most industrially advanced part. So in many ways, you need critical eyes to actually look at Russia's discourse, particularly in exploiting the discourse about the Soviet Union in regard to the global South. So you would actually understand that Ukraine played a big role at that time, being colonized and being used. The potential was used by Soviet Union in a kind of imperial way, but still, it's not right, to say that. To exploit the Soviet legacy and that against Ukraine, it's totally going disregarding the history that is there.
Because you would say, Anna, then you're not the same. You're not one people.
Yeah,
you are two countries.
Yeah,
because many people in here believe, understand in good faith that it's all the same country, it's all the same people, the same ethnicity.
Well, the thing that the Russian discourse is that no Ukrainians exist because Ukrainians are just Russians who got corrupted by whatever is there. Yeah.
Just maybe it's like here in Argentina, people say, but Uruguayans and Argentinians and Brazilians are the same people. Would anyone say that?
Well, in the case of Uruguay, what we can say is that first, we Argentinians love Uruguayans. We love them. We used to be part of the same viceroyalty, and then because of many circumstances, they had to get their independence. They had to break free. It's a long story. The United Provinces of the River Plate. So we were, our first name as a country, before we were Argentina, was United Provinces of the River Plate. Then Uruguay, of course, proclaimed its independence, and we used to be one single entity, but we are two countries, but our histories, I mean, the viceroyalty history and the history of Ukraine and Russia are completely different.
Yes.
Your history spans to
But now, Mercedes, I understand why
the
people.
foundation of Kyiv in 900.
Yes, yes.
Right?
Exactly, but now I see, because my question was, it is one of the psychological biases. We all are human beings, and you compare things to things that you know.
Exactly.
So I was asked, for example, when I was in Indonesia, people would tell me, but isn't your problem with Russia like we have with our Aceh province, which wants to break the, no, we cannot be compared to Indonesian provinces. Maybe here people, it's not a problem. I mean, this is human, people compare to what they see.
Exactly.
Maybe they were together part of some empire and then they wanted to break free. But I think what is less discussed in the global south, as I understand, different forms of imperialism. United States act imperialistic. It's not, no doubt about that. Britain was an empire, France was an empire, Spain was obviously an empire here, but for some reason, many people, I wouldn't say are blind in South America to see Russia as an empire, to see Soviet Union as an empire, and that is very wrong. You cannot be selective in your approach to imperialism. You can say this is Spanish, it was Spanish imperialism, this is American imperialism, and this is Russian imperialism. You cannot say that I'm looking at this and I'm ignoring completely. Yeah? And sometimes I think, it's not that I think badly of people, but I think some people do that on purpose for their political reasons, to be blind, not to see Russian crimes, not to see Russia as an empire, and that is very wrong. If we want to live in a better world, we have to fight back against all sorts of oppression. I mean, to build a fair future, we need to have the same position, not to be selective. Otherwise, these crimes I recognize as crimes, and here I'm blind. This is very wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with that. Is there any question that you have never been asked regarding your country or your current situation as a country that you would like to be asked about?
I know a good Russian joke. Good
Yes.
Russian propaganda. Why there are so many Ukrainian diaspora in the South America? You know the answer? Because Nazis fled there. Ukrainians are also like Nazi criminals, and because Nazi criminals wanted to escape to South America, the Ukrainian Nazis did the same. Imagine putting all the people together into, some criminals fled, of course, we know the story.
Yes.
But imagine Russian propaganda to put all people together, blaming all Germans, all Ukrainians, all other people who fled to South Africa, because if you're a Nazi, you go there. This is Russian propaganda, which is really, this is really offensive to entire continent.
How would you counter that propaganda? What would you recommend people reading to know the actual facts about Ukraine?
Serhiy Plokhy is our professor.
We will write it down.
Yes, I would write. He's a professor from Harvard. There is Harvard Ukraine Institute. There is also a small book in Ukraine, English translation, Alexander Pali, History of Ukraine. So this basic stuff. For those who can read French, for example, two colleagues from our university, they published many things in French, because I know there's a popular language, and also one of the official languages, as you told me, in South America. So they can read by Yermolenko and his wife.
Social media?
Well, in social media, of course, you can follow us, School for Policy Analysis.
We will write your names.
Maybe, yes, and there are different initiatives. We need to write it down for you.
Yeah.
We can. Our Minister of Foreign Affairs is very active. Ukrainian, they are very active in English, explaining basic stuff, because we understand that it's also our mistake that Ukraine as a state was not present here much in South America. You have to apologize, we have to apologize, and you have to forgive us, because we are not a very rich country. It's very expensive to have embassies around the world, but it was our mistake that we were not actively present here. So we apologize for that, and that's why people here don't know much about our country. So we have to compensate now with social media, with public diplomacy, like us traveling. So we want really to compensate for that.
And the language isn't a barrier anymore, because I've heard this a short time ago from a very young girl saying, well, yeah, I can't hear about the news because I don't read Ukrainian. But now we know that language isn't a barrier anymore.
And Spanish is one of the world languages. It's different varieties.
You can translate. There are translators in Instagram. You can use the Google Translator, etc. So, is there anything, as I was telling you, asking you, is there anything that nobody has asked you that you would please ask me this because I would like to say this about Ukraine?
I'm sure there are a lot of such things that we never thought, like, until someone asks you, you never kind of recognize that it's an important question that needs to be answered. So
in relation to that, I have like a million questions to ask you, and we can continue via Zoom.
We'll be happy.
I would love that. Do you have a final message to Argentinians, South Americans, Latin Americans, Americans of the three Americas, the North, the Central, and the South, the world? Do you have a personal message to convey to the peoples of the world?
No, I would just ask them to discover Ukraine for themselves. Because there are a lot of resources, particularly on social media. There is a lot of blogs about Ukraine, and Ukraine. If you take Spanish, it's one of the most popular language to learn after English in Ukraine as a second foreign language. For example, English is the first usually. Spanish very often is a second choice. So there is a lot of into available material, and with AI you have a lot of opportunities to actually get the gist of what has been said and start discovering Ukraine for yourself, and probably you'd become interested in Ukrainian language, which is not that hard as many people say. Like it's of course probably not that easy as French for Spanish language person, but it's not Chinese on the other hand. So and come to Ukraine when it becomes possible for you.
Yeah, my main message also was please come to Ukraine. Even now, even if you are very afraid of the shells, there is a west of Ukraine, there is a region behind the mountains where there is no curfew. Even people like live like almost like during the peacetime. And as I heard here many times, that sometimes flights within South America, even within one country as in Brazil, between different parts are more expensive than flights to Europe, for example. And Buenos Aires, for example, is very expensive city. So you can save some money, go to Ukraine and live for some time there for the same money as you could spend here. So just please welcome and see it with your own eyes. And I'm sure you will like it, and also it will be a very impressive travel for you as well.
So since we unfortunately come from a country that is at war, of course I wish that God spares this part of the world from any wars, so that you live in a safe environment, of course. And of course I join my colleagues in inviting you to come to Ukraine and explore Ukrainian cultures. And maybe it sounds very pathetic, maybe, and idealistic, but I think if we work all together to fight any sort of injustice, and if we leave no crime unpunished, no dictatorship in that respect. So if we really collaborate in creating a better world, I think South Latin America and all the three Americas together with us from Eastern Central Europe, if we work together diplomatically in different association organizations, I think together we can really fight back the bad things that happen in this world. And this sort of cooperation, which I think the future is there. We still think about each other as very distant, but as Oleh said, it's sometimes cheaper to fly to Europe than within South America. So we are actually closer to each other. So let's work together. Let's fight back all injustices and punish all these crimes to create a better world together.
Thank you so much, and let's enjoy our beautiful countries together, because both countries are beautiful and have much to offer. Thank you again for coming to Argentina, for being here with us. It's a pleasure for us and we'll stay in touch. Les agradezco, ahora sí paso al español, les agradezco a Maksym, a Oleh y a Ana por haber estado aquí. Vamos a pasar todos los datos de ellos para que ustedes puedan estar en contacto con ellos y seguiremos en contacto y escucharemos las preguntas que tengan para hacer porque hay mucho para preguntarles a los académicos ucranianos y a los ucranianos en general que están viviendo desde hace más de 4 años una invasión a gran escala y que todavía con una sonrisa se presentan ante nuestro país, vienen, nos conocen y nos invitan a que nos acerquemos a ellos y a su hermoso país que vale mucho la pena visitar. Muchas gracias.